So I'd like you to turn your Bible to Numbers 12. Or Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy, the 12th chapter. The book of Deuteronomy means the second giving of the law. So on the first day of the 11th month, on the 40th year, they left Egypt. They arrived at the East Desert across the Jordan River. Here, Moses rehearsed the laws of God with them before they enter the promised land. And there are very specific instructions given by Moses. And this chapter 12 is one of that. And if you are familiar with the book of Deuteronomy, okay, the Ten Commandments are enumerated on the 5th chapter. Okay, Deuteronomy chapter 5. And it goes all the way to the 10th chapter. And now we go to the 12th chapter, and let us read this together. And this is in preparation for them going across Jordan and into the promised land and inheriting the land that God has promised their forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in verse 1 of chapter 12 we read, "These are the decrees and laws you must be careful to follow in the land that the Lord, the God of your forefathers, has given you to possess, as long as you live in the land." So after rehearsing and giving them again the laws of God, God through Moses gave this particular instruction. He said, yes, you are about to go in and inherit the land, and remember these decrees and these laws, and be careful to follow them in the land that you are going in to possess. Okay. And in verse 2 he said, "Destroy completely all the places on the high mountains and on the hills and under every spreading tree where the nations you are disposing worship their gods. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and burn their Asherah poles to the fire. Cut down the idols of their gods and wipe out their names from those places." The place that you are going to go in, okay, across Jordan, they worship pagan gods. What you are supposed to do, the first thing that you do is to destroy all of them, to eradicate them, tear them down, cut them down, burn them down. He said, "You must not," verse 4, "worship the Lord your God in their way." So that is the instruction. When you go in, okay, they are pagan worshippers. Destroy the idols, destroy their religion, and do not follow what they do. Okay? And neither do you inquire how do they worship their gods. He said, "But you," okay, so here is the instruction. He said, "But you are to seek the place the Lord your God will choose from among all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling." So this is a time is that before they cross the Jordan River, because before they were able to possess the land, God said, when you cross that river into Jordan and you start to possess the land, okay, seek out the dwelling place of God. Because at this particular time, the land has not yet been divided, to the tribes of Israel. Okay, so the place of the temple, the dwelling place of God, had not yet been determined. But eventually we know that this place is, you know what the place is? Where the temple is, right? Jerusalem. Okay. Said, to that place you must go. So once the temple is established, that has become the dwelling place of God, you must go there. Right? To do what? To that place you must go. There bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts, what you have vowed to give, and your free will offerings, and the firstborn of your flocks. It's okay? You are to go to this place where God will place His name as His dwelling place, and you go there to worship God. Right? There you bring in your tithes, your offerings, your vows to Him. Said there in verse 7, in the presence of the Lord your God, you and your family shall eat and shall rejoice in everything you have put your hands to, because the Lord your God has blessed you. Say, on this place, you are to bring your tithes, okay, your family, and you shall rejoice them before the Lord. Okay? Because the Lord your God has blessed you. And in verse 8, said, you are not to do as we do here today, everyone as he sees fit, since you have not yet reached the resting place and the inheritance the Lord your God is giving you. But you will cross the Jordan and settle in the land the Lord your God is giving you, as the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance, and He will give you rest from all your enemies around you, so that you will live in safety. Then to the place the Lord your God will choose as a dwelling for His name, there you are to bring everything I commanded you, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and your special gifts, and all the choice possessions you have vowed to the Lord. And there rejoice before the Lord your God, you, your sons and daughters, your men servants and maid servants, and the Levites from your towns, who have no allotment or inheritance of their own. Be careful not to sacrifice your burnt offering anywhere you please. Offer them only at the place the Lord will choose in one of your tribes, and there observe everything I commanded you. Okay. So there was this particular instruction even before they have crossed the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Okay. The instruction was to worship God, okay, and to rejoice before Him at the place where He will put His name. Okay, His dwelling place. And we know that this is, or has become, the site of the temple in Jerusalem. Okay. And in verse 15, nevertheless, you may slaughter your animal in any of your towns and eat as much of the meat as you want. And if it were gazelle or deer, according to the blessings the Lord your God gives you, both the ceremonially unclean and the clean may eat it. But you must not eat the blood, pour it out on the ground like water. You must not eat in your own towns the tithes of your grain and new wine and oil, or the firstborn of your herds and flocks, or whatever you have vowed to give. or your free will offerings or special gifts. Instead, you are to eat them in the presence of the Lord your God at the place the Lord your God will choose. You, your sons and daughters, your manservants and maidservants, and the Levites and from your towns, and you are to rejoice before the Lord your God in everything you put your hands to. Be careful not to neglect the Levites as long as you live in your land. Okay. So again, it repeats that we need to go to a place, okay, where God has put His name, there that we may eat and rejoice before God, bringing our tithes, our vows, our special gifts and offerings. Okay. He said, when the Lord your God has enlarged your territory as He promised you, and you crave meat and say, I would like some meat, then you may eat as much as you want. Okay. Now, when we talk about these meats, okay, about this food as much as we want, we know this is talking about the clean meats, right? Is that talking about any kind of meat that we may eat, right? So these are talking about the clean meats or the clean food. And we know what these are, right? So these are those items listed on Leviticus chapter 11 and in Deuteronomy chapter 14. Okay? This is a food laws. Okay, so some of the food that we cannot eat. We cannot eat crocodile. Can we eat crocodile? No, we cannot, right? We don't eat pork. We don't eat dogs or cats or rabbits, because there are two requirements. What are two requirements? Chew the cud and divided hooves. Okay. And what are the seafood that we cannot eat? Is that seafood? Seafood. Okay. So we can't eat anything with shell, right? Crustaceans. We cannot eat that. No lobsters, no shrimps, no oysters, mussels, right? What else? Langoustine, octopus. Okay, and we only eat fish with scales and with fins. So we don't eat catfish. Hito, right? Hito, catfish. We don't eat catfish. We don't eat sharks. We don't eat eel, right? So these are things that we don't eat. And those are the food laws of God. Okay, so continuing. Said, if the place where the Lord your God chooses to put His name is too far away from you, you may slaughter animals from the herds and flocks the Lord has given you, as I have commanded you. And in your own town you may eat as much as you want to. Eat them as you would gazelle. But be sure you do not eat the blood, because the blood is the life, and you must not eat the life with the meat. You may not eat the blood. You may pour the blood. You may not eat the blood, pour it out on the ground like water. Do not eat it, so that it may go well with you and your children after you, because you will be doing what is right in the eyes of the Lord. But take your consecrated things and whatever you have vowed to give, and go to the place the Lord will choose. Present your burnt offerings on the altar of the Lord your God, both the meat and the blood. The blood of your sacrifices must be poured beside the altar of the Lord your God. But you may eat the meat. Be careful to obey all these regulations I am giving you, so that it may always go well with you, and your children after you, because you will be doing what is good and right in the eyes of the Lord your God. Okay. Verse 29. It said, the Lord your God will cut off before you the nations you are about to invade and possess. But when you have driven them out and settled in their land, and after they have been destroyed before you, be careful not to be ensnared by inquiring about their gods, saying, How do these nations serve their gods? We will do the same. Okay, God said, don't do that. Because we have, as God's people, we have our own worship regulations. We have our own festivals of God. And these festivals are listed in Leviticus chapter 23. And we know them by heart. Okay? And these are the feasts of God's are the Passover, the days of the unleavened bread, the Feast of Weeks, culminating with the day of Pentecost, the Feast of Trumpets, Day of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles, and the last great day, 7. All of these festivals are listed, in the 23rd chapter of Leviticus. These are the holidays, these are the festivals of the Lord. Okay? And these are the festivals that we, God's people, celebrate. Okay? And we are not to ensnare ourselves, okay, and to inquire what the pagans do and copy them. God said, okay, we're not supposed to do that. He said, be careful not to be ensnared by inquiring about their gods, saying, how do these nations serve their gods? We will do the same. You must not worship the Lord your God in their way, because in worshiping their God, they do all kinds of detestable things the Lord hates. They even burn their sons and daughters in the fire as sacrifices to their gods. See that you do all this, I command you. Do not add to it or take away from it. Okay. So we're given this particular instruction. Okay. Today, the Christian world, they have inquired how other pagan nations observe their holidays, how they worship their gods. Okay. And somehow these things have been imported into Christianity. Like the celebration of Easter, the celebration of the All Souls Day, Halloween, and the celebration of Christmas. Okay? And we don't want to have anything, with these pagan festivities. Our holidays are based on God's, okay, which are listed in Leviticus chapter 23. But for today's discussion, I will stay basically on the Feast of Tabernacles, okay, which is basically 4 months away. As I said earlier, is that we have started to prepare for this year's Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, and this year is earlier than last year. I think last year was in October, if I'm not mistaken. This year we're in the latter portion of September, starting on December the 24th. Okay. So let's go to that particular instruction. Please turn a few pages forward. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 14. Okay. And when you go through Deuteronomy chapter 14, okay. And let's drop down to verse 22. Deuteronomy 14:22. He said, "Be sure to set aside a tenth of all that your field produces each year." So each year, because in ancient times there are an agricultural economy, so the increase in their wealth is dependent on the harvest, or the increase in their livestock. Okay. So every year, during this season, they are to set aside a tenth of their increase of the fields produced each year. Okay. There are two harvest seasons in Israel, right? You have the spring harvest and you have the fall or the autumn harvest. Okay. So this is basically part of the autumn harvest because this is in the months of September or October when they have gathered in the produce of the particular year. And right after harvest or during the harvest season, it's an abundant season. Maraming pera dyan because you just harvested. So God said, set aside a tenth of your harvest as your tithe. Okay, he said, be sure to set a tenth of all that your field produce each year. Eat the tithe of your grain, new wine, and oil, and the firstborn of your herds, and the flocks in the presence of the Lord your God, at the place he will choose as a dwelling place for his name, so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God always. So it is basically the same instruction that we read earlier in Deuteronomy chapter 12. Here is more specific. Here it's talking about the festivals of the Lord. And we know that there are 3 festival seasons. Pilgrimage season. 3 times in a year they are supposed to go up to the temple in Jerusalem and celebrate before God. And the Feast of Tabernacles is one of them. Okay? So they are to set aside a tenth of their produce that year, and they are to rejoice before the Lord. Okay? So, but if the place is too distant, medyo malayo, may kalayuan, and you have been blessed by the Lord your God, and cannot carry your tithe, okay, because the place where the Lord will choose to put his name is too far away, then exchange your tithe for silver, and take the silver with you and go to the place the Lord your God will choose. Let's say you've been so tremendously blessed. Okay? And let's say a tenth of your produce, and you're supposed to tithe 20 goats or lamb and 5 rams, right? And 3 truckloads of wheat or rice or fruits. How do you do that? You cannot take that with you. He said, well, convert that into cash and bring it with you. Okay? And then you use the silver to buy whatever you like, cattle, sheep, wine, or other fermented drink, or anything that you wish. Wow. So if you are able to convert this into cash, God has blessed you so much, and you have this tithe, this 10%, God said, use it. Okay? Buy anything that you want, that your heart desires. Okay? Be steak, Angus steak, be your favorite sea bass or salmon, no lobster, okay? Or your roasted calf, okay? Your fancy chocolate maybe, right? Or your wine, or fermented drink, anything that your heart desires, you can buy. Okay? He said, use the silver, verse 23:6, to buy whatever you like. Cattle, sheep, wine, or other fermented drink, or anything you wish. Can you imagine you have 10% of your annual income? Okay? Because your 13th-month pay is not 10%, right? The 13th-month pay is how many percent? Hey. 1/13. How many percent is that? Nico, right? Na-calculator pa siya. Okay? Around 8%. Okay? So, 10% is beyond your 13th-month pay. Right? So, you have this amount of money, let's say your 13th-month pay, and you spend this 13th-month pay in 1 week. Okay? It's abundant, right? Yes? It is, right, Nico? Right? So it's sufficient. It's quite a lot of money. And you can actually rejoice. You can buy what your heart desires. And indulge a little bit. Okay? And you can rejoice before God. And thank God for the blessings He showered upon you that particular year. Okay? Then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice. When you say rejoice, that you're happy to spend it. It's not that, okay, I have this money, 13th-month pay, for example. Okay? Every time you spend, you think about the money. Okay? You're not rejoicing. I'm telling you, you're suffering. Okay? You are suffering. Okay? If you count the money, you're suffering. Okay? The way to do the Feast of Tabernacles is that you set it aside as a budget. Okay? This millennial generation, di ba? Millennial. Nico is a millennial. Okay? That's why he likes to travel. But he travels on a budget, right? Travels on a budget. Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of people travel on a budget. That's why the budget airlines are doing so well, right? The budget hotels, the budget airlines are doing so well. Okay? Yeah. Now, the key here is that you don't want to suffer when you're traveling, right? Right? That you want to save every peso, right? So that you have a budget, right? You have a budget, and you just want to enjoy yourself within that budget. You know? Am I making sense to you? Yes. Sure, huh? Okay. Now, so the Feast of Tabernacles is exactly the same thing. You have a budget. Your budget is 10% of your annual income. Okay? Net income. Okay? Your disposable income. And that 10% you spend before the Lord. Okay? So if you bring with you 20,000 pesos, okay, you expect to spend 20,000 pesos. Right? Don't try to count, I spent 120 pesos this morning for breakfast. No, just spend it. You know, just don't count it. Just as long as you have money, you know, in your pocket, you're okay, right? That's how you rejoice before the Lord. Okay? Huwag kayong magkuripot dito. Hindi pwedeng kuripot dyan. Okay? You have to spend because you want to rejoice before the Lord. And he said here is that, then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God and rejoice. And do not neglect the Levites living in your towns, for they have no allotment or inheritance of their own. Okay? He said, At the end of every 3 years, bring all the tithes of that year's produce and store it in your towns, so that the Levites, who have no allotment or inheritance of their own, and the aliens, the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns, may come and eat and be satisfied, and so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Okay, so this is a festival that everyone rejoices. The haves and the have-nots. So if you have excess, you need to share this. It is a commandment. Okay? Like for example, you have good income. Okay? What you need by yourself going to the Feast of Tabernacles will only cost you 12,000 pesos. Okay? And you have 20. Okay? So what do you do with the 8? Okay? Remember the Levites, the widows, and the fatherless. Okay? That's where you can assist. Okay? Because that is your budget. Your budget is 10%. Okay? Now, this is interesting command because it says a lot, 10%, which is your tithe. This tithe is not given to the temple or the church. The one mentioned earlier by in the sermonette by Milo is that tithe, that first 10% is given for the work of God. Okay? This 10%, this tithe, the festival tithe, this is that we spend, okay, to rejoice before God. Okay? Ganyan yan. Do not confuse the two. The first one is going to the work of the church. This one is for you to enjoy and to rejoice before the Lord. It's a commandment. And you will say, wow, ang laki naman, no? 20%, 10% that tied to the church, 20%, another 10% that I have to spend during the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay. Significant, right? It's a significant number. 20% is 20%. Okay. But there is a blessing that is attached to it. And we have seen in our church is that people who are faithful to this are actually blessed by God. Because God says that there is a corresponding blessing. I always tell people about this tithe. Of course, we don't talk about tithing very often here in church, you know. But we all know that we practice tithing as commanded in the scripture and right by God. Okay? And if I have time, I can come back to that a little bit, you know, because when you go to the internet, okay, nag-internet kayo, you search, a lot of these evangelical ministries, they will tell, wow, wala nang tithing. You know, the tithing is no longer enforced. Okay? And they will say, yeah, you know, tithing is for Israel, ancient Israel. They give it to a brother, the Levites. Okay? And since the Levites are no longer there, the temple is no longer, you know, standing in Jerusalem, there is no need for tithe. You know? But they're just missing the whole point, right? Okay? They're missing the whole point. And they will say, well, sa New Testament, wala naman nakasulat na tithing, ah. Right? But, the key there is, tithing was never abolished in the New Testament. You remember, in Matthew chapter 22, I think it's 22, you know, And some people wanted to test Jesus. And he gave Jesus a coin. Right? What did Jesus say to them? Ano yung nakasulat dyan? Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what's God's. Okay? What is to Caesar? Tithes. Taxes. What is to God? Tithes. Klaro yan. Okay? You give tithes to God, and you give taxes to Caesars. Okay? And people say that, hey, the tithes given to a brother, Levites. Okay? But it's not so. Okay? As explained earlier, which if I have time, I explain it to you a little bit better, is that tithe everything belongs to God, right? And we give 10% of our income, of the blessing that we receive from God, back to Him in terms of tithe. God gives that tithe to the Levites. Okay? We give to God, God gives that to the Levites. That's how it works. Okay? And we can read that, if we have time, in Numbers chapter 18. But we won't go there for now. But this is interesting, that we have to set aside a tenth or a tithe for the celebration of the festivals of God. Okay? And particularly the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? It is a command. Commandment yan. Okay? It's not a suggestion. It is a command. And we need to be faithful to God's command. Okay? We are basically how long are we? We are 4 months away to the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay. If you have not yet set aside your festival tithe, I suggest that you start doing so. Okay? Set aside na kayo. Okay? Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. Let's start from verse 13. Deuteronomy 16 in verse 13. Here we read, "Celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days. After you have gathered the produce of your threshing floor and your winepress, be joyful at your feasts. You, your sons, your daughters, your men servants and maidservants, and the Levites, the aliens, the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns." Okay, we set aside 10th of our income that particular year, and we celebrate before the Lord, including those who have less. Okay, it's not only us celebrating, but everyone, the household of God, celebrating. Okay? So for 7 days, celebrate the feast to the Lord your God at the place the Lord will choose. For the Lord your God will bless you in all your harvests and in all the work of your hands, and your joy will be complete. Okay. 3 times a year, all your men must appear before the Lord your God at the place that He will choose, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, at the Feast of Weeks, at the Feast of Tabernacles. No man shall appear before the Lord empty-handed. Each of you must bring a gift in proportion to the way the Lord your God has blessed you. The Feast of Tabernacles is 4 months away. 4 months is very fast. Mabilis lang yan. Okay? 4 Bible studies lang yan. Okay? Andyan na tayo. Okay? Kailan lang yung Bible study natin ng mother, right? Now we're talking about the father. Okay? So fast. So fast. So 4 months will be here in a jiffy. Okay? Very fast. You won't notice it is the Feast of Tabernacles already. Okay? So what are we gonna do? We already have the calendar prepared, right? We have our committee chair, festival coordinator here, Alex and Malu Sanchez. Right. So, let us be faithful in keeping God's holidays. And to keep God's holidays and to rejoice before God, you need cash. Okay? Need cash. That means you need to save up for your tithes. Right. Now, sometimes I would ponder, is that, why do we need 10% to rejoice? Why not 2%, 3%, 5%? Okay? Or any amount that I can save up. Right? If I can save up 5,000, why can I not rejoice with 5,000? Okay? But I believe that the kind of rejoicing that God wants us to experience is different. Okay? Because if we save up properly, we're saving up 10%, I think there is an element of anticipation. Okay? If you save up 10% of your monthly income and you set aside as your festival tithe, there is this sense of anticipation. Okay? Moving forward. Okay? And once you're able to save up and you're able to actually spend that money, then God knows that you truly rejoice before Him. Okay? And the key here is that everyone should rejoice. Not only you, but the Levites within your gates, the widows, the fatherless, the orphans, everyone. Okay. So what we have done over the years is that we have created a festival fund. Okay. I don't know how many of us know that there is a festival fund. How many of us know that there is a festival fund? Oh, yan. Marami na tayong pera dyan mamaya. Okay? Joke lang yan. Okay? So we have this festival fund. Okay? What is this festival fund for? Because a lot of people, not a lot, some of the people would come and request for assistance. Because they don't have enough. Right? So we created this festival fund so that those who have excess can contribute to the fund so we can use the fund to help finance the needs of others. Okay? We have this fund. Okay? So I want to repeat, it seems that not a lot of us know that there is a fund like that, but I see a lot of hands. Okay? There is a festival fund. So if you have excess and you want to help other people rejoice at the feast, contribute to the fund. Okay? Now, I want to go back to a particular verse. Okay? In Deuteronomy 14 in verse 28. He said, at the end of every 3 years, okay, so the festival, you count 1 year, 2 year, 3rd year, end of the 3rd year, okay, he said, At the end of every 3 years, bring all the tithes of that year's produce and store in your towns, so that the Levites, who have no allotment or inheritance of their own, and the aliens, the fatherless, and the widows who live in your towns may come and eat and be satisfied, so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. So every third year, okay, you use the tithe, not particularly for yourself. You use this tithe to make other people happy, that they may rejoice. What is this third year tithe? This is a third of your income. So in principle, I'm talking in principle, you can provide 30% of your tithe to assist the other people and help them enjoy the festival of the Lord. You can put as much as 30% into the festival fund. Okay? By this particular principle. Now, but this tithe, as we're saying, is for our enjoyment. Atin ito. Okay? We rejoice before God. And in the process, God will bless you because you have been faithful, you have come to God, and you have rejoiced before Him, you have given Him thanks, and you have shared your blessing with others. God will bless you in the ensuing year so that you may continue to do that year on year. Okay. Yeah, so that's basically it. Okay, so I want everyone to prepare for this year's Feast of Tabernacles. It's basically 4 months away. And just I want to emphasize again the following things. Be faithful. Okay. It's not easy to attend the feast. It's not easy. Never easy. It requires a lot of faith. Okay, because you have to apply for your leave. Right? Once you apply for a leave, we're just talking about it earlier, no work, no pay. That particular week, you're not salaried, right? Unless you apply for your vacation leave, And that means you will have less time going abroad, right? And at the same time, you are to spend 10% of your annual income on that particular week. It's never easy. Okay, never easy. That's why it requires faith for you, for anyone, to be present at the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? And you need to be faithful to your tithes. Okay? And you need to rejoice before the Lord. And you need, to remember the Levites, the fatherless, the widows, okay, and the poor, among us who may need assistance for them to celebrate and rejoice at the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, so it's 4 months away. Now, I said if we have time, I would like to go to Numbers 18. So I think we have a few minutes. I want to go to Numbers 18, just to round off what had been discussed earlier by Milo, and of course my discussion now about the tithes. So let's go to the first tithe, as we leave the second tithe behind. So we go to the first tithe. So how does this work? Okay? This tithe. Okay. Numbers 18. Verse 1. It said, the Lord said to Aaron, you, your sons, and your father's family are to bear the responsibility for offenses against the sanctuary. And you and your sons alone are to bear the responsibility for offenses against the priesthood. Bring your fellow Levites from your ancestral tribe to join you and assist you when you and your sons minister before the tent of the testimony. So, the house of Levites, they have been chosen by God, okay, to perform the temple work, okay, to do God's work, okay. The 12 tribes of Israel, they were all given lands except for the tribe of Levites. Okay, they have no inheritance. They don't own particular land. Okay, so they live among their brothers. Okay, they don't have land as their inheritance. So, in verse 8, then the Lord said to Aaron, I myself have put you in charge of the offerings presented to me. All the holy offerings the Israel gave me, I give to you and your sons as your portion and regular share. So all the tribes of Israel, because of their inheritance, they have lands they can till and they can harvest. They give 10% of that to the Lord. Okay? And since the Levites, they have no inheritance, okay? They have no land. God, and they are the one God has put in charge of the temple, and of teaching the people about God. God gave them the tithes. So the tithes is given to God, okay, and God gave the tithes to the Levites. Claro yan. Okay? Let me read that again. I myself have put you in charge of the offerings presented to me. So the offerings were all presented to God. Okay? All the holy offerings the Israel give me, I give to you and your sons and your portion as your portion and regular share. From you are to have the part of the most holy offerings that is kept from the fire. From all the gifts they bring me as most holy offering, whether grain or sin offering or guilt offering, that part belongs to you and your sons. Okay? And in verse 11, this also is yours, whatever is set aside from the gifts of all the offerings of the Israelites. I give this to you and your sons and your daughters as your regular share. Okay? So, tithe is given to God. God gives the tithe to the Levites. Let's go to verse 20. He said, the Lord said to Aaron, you will have no inheritance in their land, nor will you have any share among them. I am your share and your inheritance among the Israelites. Okay? He said, I give to the Levites all the tithes of Israel as their inheritance in return for the work they do serving at the tent of meeting. Okay. So, God said, I give to the Levites all the tithes in Israel. Okay. The tithes, they belong to God. They are given to God. God gave that or gives that to the Levites. In verse 23, it is the Levites who are to do the work at the tent of meeting, and bear the responsibility for all the offenses against it. This is a lasting ordinance for the generations to come. They will receive no inheritance among the Israelites. Instead, I give to the Levites. God said, I give to the Levites as their inheritance the tithes that the Israelites present as an offering to the Lord. That is why I said concerning them, they will have no inheritance among the Israelites. Then the Lord said to Moses, speak to the Levites and say to them, when you receive from the Israelites a tithe I give you as your inheritance, you must present a tenth of that tithe as the Lord's offering. Your offering will be reckoned to you as grain from the threshing floor or juice from the press. In this way you will present an offering to the Lord from all the tithes you receive from the Israelites. From these tithes you must give the Lord's portion to Aaron the priest. You must present as the Lord's portion the best and holiest part of everything given to you. Now, so what happens here? Israel, the entire Israel, they give 10% of their increase, of their harvest, of the produce, okay, to God. God gives that 10% to the Levites. Okay. Question. Are Levites required to tithe? Yes. Yes. They have to give 10% to Aaron, the high priest. Okay. So the Levites, they tithe as well. Okay. So the Levites, they give 10% to God. God gives that 10% to Aaron. Okay? So that is the system of the tithing system. Okay? Tithe is not we don't give to a brother, we don't give to the Levites, we give to God. Now, it's God who gives it, to the Levites. And today, to the ministry. Who does the work of God. Okay. Tithing is our responsibility. Okay? Because some people say, I know I don't want to tithe because I don't know how the funds are being used. Well, that's not your problem. Right? Your problem is between you and God. If you don't tithe, you have a problem with God. But once God gives that money to the Levites, God gives that money to the administration of the church. Okay, it is the administration or the administrator who is now accountable to God. Okay? Okay. Because there is a verse here. Numbers 18. Let's go back to Numbers 18. Okay. Okay, Numbers 18. Okay, let's go to verse 1. He said, the Lord said to Aaron, you, your sons, and your father's family are to bear the responsibility for offenses against the sanctuary. Okay, if they do not take care of the sanctuary, the responsibility falls with them. The responsibility does not fall with the people of Israel. The responsibility of the people of Israel is to give tithe to God. God gives the money to the house of Levi for the maintenance and the work of the temple. Okay? That's the responsibility. Okay? And if they have an offense, they will be dealt with. Okay? So, looking at two parts. Our responsibility to God, we give our tithes. God gives the tithe to the church administration. How the money is spent is between God and the administrator. Okay? That's how you define it. Okay? Now, if you say, I don't want to give tithes because I don't know how the money is spent, well, you now have a problem with God. Right? Because you're not fulfilling your obligation. Okay? Once you have fulfilled the obligation to God, you're done. You're clean. God will bless you. You know. And the administrator who are in charge of God funds, they need to be diligent with God's money. That's not their money. That's God's money. Okay? I hope that I'm clear with that. So I would like to remind everyone that the feast is very, very fast approaching. It's basically 4 months away. You'll be here in a jiffy. And we have plans for the feast, which is ongoing. And please remember that you save us this early for your festival tithe. And we have a fun. I just want to emphasize that we have a festival fund. Okay, that you can contribute to, you can participate in, that you may help others to come to the feast and to rejoice before the Lord as well.